So good evening, everyone. And yeah, so today our agenda is more into understanding the programming language part first, because without that we cannot go with the data, like managing the data and all. So Python is one of the preliminary ask, or you can say a prerequisite, okay, for most of these data engineering part. Okay, so for those who are already aware of Python, for them it is kind of quite easy. Okay, this is nothing informative for them if you are already working as a data scientist or somebody who working on Python already. So majority of them, I guess, you are aware of Python, or can I know like how many of you are aware of Python? I guess majority of them. Okay. Little bit, okay. Cool. I guess majority of them are aware, but yes. So for those kind of who are new to Python, so as I mentioned yesterday in our previous session yesterday, that we need to install these Anaconda. Okay, so Anaconda is kind of a basic requirement. With Anaconda you can easily set up. So let me show you. So you can see that once you install Anaconda, there is Anaconda prompt is there, which is the CLI version of Anaconda. Okay, and you will also get to see Anaconda Navigator. Okay, in your apps. Once you install Anaconda, like I mentioned yesterday, so you will get to see two things. One is prompt. Prompt is like you want to install anything in your Anaconda environment, so that there where your prompt comes into the picture, you can use it as a kind of a CLI. Okay. And you have Navigator, where you actually, it's a GUI version. Okay, so let me open and show you the Navigator. It takes a bit time in Windows system to kind of start the Navigator, whereas it is quite super fast in Mac and Linux OS. Okay, I don't know, in Windows everywhere it stucks. So Anaconda Navigator is basically the GUI platform, okay, where you actually have multiple IDs in place. It is kind of marketplace, like your Google Play Store, right? You have multiple apps over there in your Google Play Store, whichever you want to use it, use it. So Anaconda Navigator is kind of a marketplace, okay, for a developer. So he or she can kind of plug in and plug out any of their ID with their kind of the one ID which you love the most, okay. So ID is what? Integrated development environment, where actually you write all these codes in a place. Okay, your compiler, your interpreter, everything is kind of integrated with your ID, with which you actually execute and get your code ready. So it's still initializing, but in Mac it would have been kind of rapid fire by this few minutes and seconds. Anyway, so by the time it goes up, I'll just briefly introduce. So Anaconda over here in Python, and similarly it happens with most of these languages. Okay, external packages are also there, and it is very popular in terms of data engineering. Like we will be importing different type of external packages, and we'll be installing and importing those, right? So for those cases, we can take of Anaconda prompt, okay, and from there we can create our own. Like you can create an environment, okay, as many environment as you want, and at the same time you can kind of install the packages. So I will show you all of those, okay, in that entire flow. In the meantime, let us see. This is our Anaconda. navigator. Okay, it's kind of a marketplace. Okay, so you have everything. These are the different type of IDs that are present. Okay, PyCharm, community, professional. Okay, earlier PyCharm was not a part of Anaconda. PyCharm is a different ID. Okay, mostly we use this PyCharm ID for kind of a real-time production-based development. So, but as a beginner level, we will mostly use this Jupyter notebook. Okay, because it is very interactive in nature. Okay, like it is not like in other IDs which are not much interactive. It's kind of, you want to build an object-oriented programming or anything as such, you go with this PyCharm and these kind of IDs. Eventually, Spider is also a similar one. Okay, so these are the kind of applications which are present. You click on this home, you will get to see all these applications which are ready available. Now coming to these environments, environment is something that which helps you to create a different kind of a flavor. For an example, in data engineering or in data science or any of the, it's not only related to engineering, data engineering or data science, or any of the project, you have certain limitations with that particular project. Okay, so let's say you are building a ticketing app. Okay, and you want to use some external packages, and you want to use packages are basically nothing but those are kind of external tools, you can say it as, in a very simple language, that helps you to solve certain task or certain purpose. Okay, so which will get more clear while we understand the different concepts. Okay, and our Python will be not like next two sessions will be on Python, today and next session. Okay, and in these two sessions we'll be understanding Python in more detail, and then slowly we will mold our Python towards data engineering. Okay, so not into a web development or something like that, which is a separate story altogether. So at first we'll understand the Python basics. We'll try to cover the Python basics today. Tomorrow means our next session will be covering Python advanced kind of story, and in the third, means in the next session again we'll go with Python towards data engineering, like the tools which are involved, basic tools. Okay, not full-fledged data engineering tools, but basic tools. Okay, and then we will go with database and all. How can we integrate database with the help of Python, and how can we kind of query the database, setting up the database. And then we'll go with different type of databases, NoSQL and SQL. Okay, and all of those. So slowly we'll enter to that data part. So coming back to Python, so environments are basically designed as per your projects. You want to build a web application or a web related project or a ticketing tool, as I was mentioning, right? So what does an environment says? Environment is nothing but it is a kind of a bucket. Okay, for those who are from the IT infrastructure background, DevOps, or people who know DevOps, okay, you know Docker, right? Docker container. Okay, what is that container? It is basically defined with certain packages. Okay, defined with certain tools, defined with certain application which is required to solve XYZ purpose or any project. So you put all the required stuff in a given container. Okay, it is like a bucket where you put all these required stuffs, and apart from that, nothing else is there, only the required stuff which is important. Similarly, environments over here is also a similar concept. Okay, in fact, it is kind of a duplicate concept. So here we are, like in Docker, you can kind of pull multiple different applications, like there is no boundary of the applications. But over here in environment, it is not about application, it is only with Python and its packages, its versions. Okay, so one particular environment E1, and you have another environment. This is another environment which is E2. E1 is for, let's say, ticketing tool. This is only for ticketing tool. Ticket app, something like that. where you have specific Python version, let's say 3.6. You have, let's say, some database SQL versions, okay, some specified SQL, or let's say you are using SQLite version, okay, as it cannot be used. Means, let's say, assuming that we want to use SQLite, okay, so SQLite is there and its own version, okay. Then you might be using the different, let's say, Flask, as it is a web-based Flask, or different third-party APIs, okay, or the packages, XYZ packages. You might be using pandas, okay, NumPy, okay, blah blah blah. These are the packages. Or let's say, let's keep these pandas, NumPy. Let's say this you are using Flask. You're using SQLite Flask, and for Bootstrap you are using a specific version of Bootstrap, okay. You are using a specific, let's say, Bootstrap 4.x, okay. Currently 5 is the latest, so let's say you are using Bootstrap 4.x. So these are some specified requirement that you have, okay, which you are going to use it for your ticket app, which you are going to build it, this environment. Now you are not going to mix your environment with any other environment. Now another new project you are building, for that new project you are creating a different environment. So this environment is for analytics environment. So whatever the ticketing, it is a web app, it is a web app, and this is basically for data science. So all the details which you are putting into this ticket app, you want to analyze those with this particular environment. So you want to analyze those ticket, or those data, okay, not ticket, rather the entire data. You want to analyze, you want to perform any data science task. So that you want to do it in this environment too, where you have a specified version of Python, which is, let's say, 3.9. Just an example I'm taking, 3.9. So in our ticket app, you are using a Python version of 3.6, whereas in analytics app, you are using a Python version 3.9. So there is a change in this environment, okay. So why now this gives a lot of flexibility here, because in 3.6 environment you have some limitations, in 3.9 you have some limitation. Maybe in 3.6 the packages which are associated with 3.6 works much better. So every package has, again, a lot of limitations. So you need to go through their through their kind of documents. For all these packages you need to go through these documents. So again, in 3.9 you need to go through certain documents, okay, that for 3.9 what all the compatible packages are there, what is the compatible version of a specific package. So all these things keeping in mind, environments are being designed, okay. So this is a very, very useful tool that is present with Anaconda, in fact, with all the IDs. So you can create the base is basically the core environment, and then on top of it you are creating multiple environment. Like I have created computer vision environment, NLP environment, okay, then PyTorch environment, vision environment. So as many as environment you can create it. So it depends on your project. If you want to create a new project and you feel that there are certain limitations which might affect your base version, create a new environment. So if you want to create a new environment, click on this create and then you name an environment, and then you select the version, okay, over here. So 3.8, 3.7, 3.6, 3.5, 2.7. These are the available version. 3.9 officially not yet disclosed, okay. It is still in a beta version, but it is out, means anybody can install it, but officially it is not integrated. So these are the versions which are available, and you can choose any of these version and you can apply, and you create your own environment. On that environment, you need to pull all the necessary packages, necessary tools that you want to use it. So this is the benefit of using multiple environment. And I always suggest that whenever you are creating any new project, and it has to be a very large project, like creating unnecessary environment means you are hijacking a lot of memory. So it is not suggested again. You should not hijack the memory. So you have to, you should create only if it is kind of making some categorization. Okay, so don't hijack a lot of memory. You can create the environment, and you can in fact use it as a kind of a categorical, like language related packages, like in data science and AI ML. Natural language related projects are quite different from computer vision projects. Vision projects and language projects are different. For vision project, the associated tools, associated packages, and the version of the packages are different comparative to the one which are in language. So that's why I have created, but I haven't created for each and every project a new environment. Okay, until and unless you see a significant difference over there. And this is how you create environment, and these two I have no options. Okay, if you are going to let's say you in a real-time production, what happens? Let's say you are working on a new project, or you are going to work on a new project where you already have an environment ready. Okay, so this happens in industry basically, not in practicing. What happens, like in organizations, they will create an environment for you with restricted packages, and you cannot install the packages. Read-write permissions are being managed centrally by the organization. But again, these are rare. Most of the organization gives you the liability to import and install any of the packages. But again, still some of them can be, like specifically the finance related projects. You have a lot of restriction there. Okay, you cannot simply go and install or import anything. So for them, there is a restriction, and for that they create the environment for you. You don't need to create your own environment. The team will actually create the environment for you. Okay, so that will be done by importing the environment. So you can click on import. If you click on import, you need to select the imported file, what your IT team will be giving you, and then you can easily import it. Okay, so once you import it, that becomes a part of your Anaconda environment. Okay, so that environment is more restricted, or you already have the things which are available. It is not about always about the restriction of the packages, but there will be some sort of packages which will define, like there are some libraries which are important, will be already pre-installed or pre-defined. There could be a case where an organization by itself is creating their own library. What is library? It is a kind of function. So let's say, for an example, you want to create an array, and array has its own data structure, right? So before understanding programming, one of the important concept is data structure. So in data structure, we actually learn the different way we can express the data. Okay, for an example, very simple data structures, like you have the data types which are already there, like integer, character, string. These are already present. The other part of the data structure is how can you store the data, how can you store the information, and what are the different structure available for storing those information. So we are going to learn anyway all of those. So in library, what we do, library is basically used for particular objective to solve it. Okay, so for, let's say, you want to kind of build a machine learning project. So for that you need some mathematical computation. So every time, rather developing those mathematical formulas or everything, you have a specified library which you can take it and use it, or somebody will create the library. Okay, as an open source community, somebody will create the library, and in that library all those mathematical formulas are derived in terms of a programming language, and you can make use of that library without even writing those mathematical programs. So you are taking the benefit of those library and you are solving your purpose. So it is like libraries are designed and defined so that you only focus on what is required rather than building everything from scratch. Okay, so it is kind of a function, but it is larger scale. So libraries are used. So you might have a specific library, or an organization may have a library already created, and they have created the library by their own. It is not like you are importing from a separate external packages as an external package, but rather our organization has developed a library and they want to, and you as a part of that organization want to use that library. So for that, you need to import the entire package, because that library may have a dependent library. So let me show you how does the library look like. So let's say NumPy package. So I will not go to numpy.org. Yeah, let me go to this PyPy, because this is also where all the libraries are hosted. All the details of the libraries are hosted. You can see for this NumPy, this is one of the library used for computing array in Python. You can see NumPy is the fundamental package for array computing with Python. Okay, so it is very, very useful in ML, and eventually in data engineering also it is important. We'll be learning it as well. Okay, in tomorrow's session, this next session. So here what we can see that in this project description, you can have that n-dimensional array object. Okay, so these are the features what this library provides. These are the features. Okay, and you can see that release history. If you click, you can see all the release which already happened for this particular library. Okay, so these are the releases. Now each and every release has certain objective to solve. Okay, so this is the release, and come over here. It do also have a dependent packages. Okay, so this is numpy.org. It do also have a dependent package. Okay, so which you will be not able to see it here, but in our while we write the code, I will show you. Okay, NumPy will also has a dependent package, and with that, so a particular package is only not developed only with one single or only with a core Python. It might also use a secondary or a dependent package. So for that also we take this benefit of environment and import it as an environment. So environment is super important, and basically it helps you. So for this, let me click on the CVENV. You can see these are the packages which are present. Okay, it is loading. Let it load. Let me show you. So every environment will have their own listed package which is installed for that environment. You can see that for CVENV we have these packages. Now over here you can see this Python symbol and Anaconda symbol. Anaconda symbol is like already defined in a base package, and this Python symbol you can see, it means that we have imported and installed these packages. Anaconda symbol defines that already these packages are there in the base package. something that we have added extra. These are the packages which it shows that we have added extra. Clear? So let me go back to the base root, and this is the root package. Like base root means is the base package. Rest, nothing is important here. There is another option to clone. Okay, so clone is for if you want to, if sometimes what happens that you have a specific package to get it installed and specific package to work. So where else? Clone is like you want to clone means you want to adhere or adopt all the packages or all the libraries which are already there in the given environment. So cloning, we basically, I don't recommend it because again, it automatically start installing or get your environment ready. It takes a lot of time. Okay. Unnecessary junks also can get cloned there because that is not into your control. Your cloning means exact same copy of a different environment is getting created, which is not recommended, and we don't use it basically. So this is the navigator, and over here you need to click on this launch. Once you hit on this launch, you will be able to see the Jupyter notebook available. So this is one way, and the other way is this is the recommended way. The other way is you can use Google Collab. Okay, Google Collab for writing your codes. Now Google Collab is the new way of defining IDE. Okay, so this IDE Google Collab is basically mapped with your Google account. You don't need to install anything. You don't need to import anything. All the packages are already there with Google Collab, means in the GCP cloud. Okay, so what is happening is Google is giving you the account, right? Your Google account. With that, Google is also giving you this Collab service. The only thing is with this Collab service, you have this 15 GB Google defined storage space is given to you, right? So that within that 15 GB, Collab is also consuming this space. So Collab is also consuming the 15 GBs of space, okay, which Google has already allocated for you. So Collabs runs in that, means it doesn't need any specific installation, specific environments, nothing is important. You can just simply open Google Collab and you will be able to see the line for executing and writing the code. The another aspect of Google Collab is like if you have the data in drives, if you have your data in drives, you can store in Google Drive and you can connect all those data with the help of Collab. So that is one of the biggest advantage of using Collab. The other part or disadvantage of Collab is it is mostly sessional. The notebooks are sessional notebooks, means if you are not active for a day, if you just close the notebook, automatically all the variables and everything get lost. Again, you need to start from beginning. So it is kind of sessional, means temporary memory is consuming, storing all the information. And again, when you close the notebook, next day when you open it, everything is fresh. You need to start from beginning. And that quite also happened with Jupyter Notebook as well. I should not say that Jupyter Notebook is also not sessional. It is also sessional, means if you start your notebook, if you start Jupyter Notebook and if you start coding it right away, it will store. And if you close the notebook and completely, again, all the variables will get lost. And in fact, those are kind of not going to repeat. Okay, so everything is sessional over here. And in fact, all the IDs have it. But Google Collab, it is very much kind of very big disadvantage, because even though in just an hour of inactiveness can lost your variables, to start everything from beginning. So this is all about your ID. I might be using Google Collab, might be using Jupyter Notebook, doesn't matter. You can use also any of the IDs, whichever you like the most. Okay, there is no kind of restriction or something like that. Now coming to Python, core Python. So Python is why we choose Python. Why don't we choose Java? Why don't we choose any other language? In fact, you can choose it. There is no harm in it. Okay. Every language has nowadays a machine learning package or the data engineering packages already available. But the use of Python is very flexible. The data structure used in Python is very flexible comparative to the Java and C++. Moreover, the available open source community is kind of contributed more on Python. So you will have the same thing available in Java, but not at a very large scale. Because in terms of ML and data science, data engineering, everything, Python is more kind of leveraged. Okay. And it is also acted, it has also been now added as a programming tool for different data engineering tools like PySpark. So those are the things that is already available with us and very much easy to learn and very easy to use. Comparatively, if you want another programming to learn, you cannot learn in 2 to 3 days, but you can learn Python in 2 to 3 days. So that's one of the robustness. Okay. And it can be used everywhere. It can be used for big data analytics. It can be used for real-time web servers. Okay. It can be used as a database query management stuff. Okay. So you can do anything with Python. There is no limitation. Like the way you can do anything with C and Java, here also you can do everything nowadays. But most targeted stuff that we do with Python is the ML data engineering, data science part. And moreover, you don't need to get into too much of complications. As I mentioned, that Python has been designed in such a way that complications are quite less. Okay, in storing or managing your memory. Okay, so that these are things that we will see. So installation is already done. Everything is done. Now let me go with very simple is like print. Here we are at MCI for data engineering course. Okay, I'm writing in short. These are very basics for those who know it, but yes, for those who are new, keeping them in mind and just going through this. Okay. Now, the next is in Python. One of the most important aspect is variable. You hit this run button. Okay, over here, you will be able to see this, and you can see that here it's got printed. In terms of Jupyter Notebook, you will get to see the run over at the top. Okay, I am not using Jupyter Notebook as of now because I am saving some of my systems computation. Okay, rather than using Google. Okay, I'm using Google for this. Most of the time, this Windows systems it's big laggy. Okay, so that's why I'm using Google Collab. But any of those, if you are coding parallelly with me, you can see that there is a run icon in the Jupyter Notebook. Okay, on the top. Just hit on the run. That's it. Next is variables in Python. Okay, so variable is something like where you store the information. Okay, variable is a place where you store the information. So for an example, x is equal to some value. Let's say data engineering. X is equal to data engineering. Y is equal to 5. Okay. So these all are variable. Now variable has a different standards. Okay. For an example, means different types. Okay. So let us talk about these variable types. Okay. One of the variable can be used with other variable. So I will talk about the types. Before that, one variable can be used with another variable. So X is equal to data engineering and X is equal to 5. Now what will happen at the first line? X is basically what? It is a string. Okay, this is a text form, right? This is a string. So let us do this. Sorry. First, let us see with the different variable name. So variable is basically an address where your data is getting stored. X is basically the address where your data is getting stored. Okay. And what is that data? Data is basically data engineering. Okay. Now let us print it. So you can see that data engineering and 5, both we have printed. Now let us see. Now if X is equal to data engineering and X is equal to 5, both it happens. Okay. Then what will happen? X will be 5, but Y previously it was 5. So that's why Y is also represented as 5. Previously Y was 5, right? I haven't made any change in Y, but I have made only the change in X. So X is equal to 5 now. So X and Y both are 5. You want to understand like how much space it is taking. Okay. But these are not used in real time, like how much space it is taking for a given variable. Nobody uses it, but yes, if we want it, then from sys import get size of. Okay, so what is this? Let me explain. Sys is basically a class, and we are importing a function from this sys class. Sys is basically a class. What is class? Class is basically a category, or you can say a main, a kind of a grouper of an object. Okay. For an example, car is a class. Okay. And its corresponding functions can be, a car can have driving, a machine means basically the engine. Okay. It can have the different components, like wheel can be one of the class, engine can be one of the class, chassis can be one of the class, right? So those are the functions, and car itself is an entity. Okay, so that is what is known as class. Class is basically an entity. So sys is basically an entity. From sys we are taking a function which is get size of. Now if you do get size of X 28, okay, get size of Y 28, as both values are same, so that's why Y and X both are giving the same value. Okay. It is not required. All the imports you can push it at the top. Okay. Basically, that is what is recommended. Any import you can do it at the top. Now you can see the X size got increased from 28 to 58 because more data got stored in spite of 2 data. Okay, so this is how it basically, and this is this function is being derived from the Python is being derived from a different programming language. So whatever is available in C and whatever is available in Java, it's getting inherited in Python as well. So you can do almost the same stuff what is required. Okay, so this is how you actually So over here, what is the unit of this value? 58. What does the unit represent? Bytes. This unit is not MB, KB, not like that. Every memory we actually take it in form of bytes. Okay. So this is what is represented in bytes, 58 bytes, 28 bytes. Okay. So what is variable? Variable is basically a space. It's basically the address, not even the space, but it is an address where your values are getting stored. You call that address, you get the value. Okay. Any doubts, anybody, for the beginners? I know for those who are already aware of this, for them, this is all basics. But for those who are new to Python, for them, any doubts, please let me know. Any questions that you have it. Anybody? Okay, I have a question. Class and functions. Okay. Basically, class is a kind of, as I mentioned, it's you can take it as a design. Class can be treated as a design where you actually create a real-time objects. For an example, in order to build a car, you need to have a chassis. Okay, you need to have a in order to build a car, any car, okay, you need to have, first thing is engine. You need to have an engine, right, which will actually just a minute. Engine is going to kind of run that car, right? Next, second, this out of engine, you need to have a chassis, right? What does the chassis do here? It's going to carry the entire car, like going to create the space. Next is third, wheels, which is going to move, add the mobility to this engine and chassis. Assuming that only these are the three components, there are many such components that you also know, everybody knows. So what is car? Car is a class. Class is what? A design, or you can say class is a blueprint. Formally, class is known as blueprint. Okay, a design, a prototype. Like before we build a house, we actually design, right? That which will be the drawing room, which will be the bedroom, which portion is the staircase, and based upon that we add those objects. We add the bricks, we add these cement, we create the walls, right? So that is one of the classic example. And what is function? Okay, class and object has a relation. Function is different. Okay, what is object? Object is basically one particular part of the class. Like engine is an object, chassis is an object, wheel is an object. What is function? Something that you are doing repeatedly, or something that you want to compute. Let's say you want to count 10 items from a given basket. So you will just do what? You will go and count one by one, right? And then that is fine. Counting is fine. Next, if somebody asks that whether after counting that whether it is an odd number or whether it is an even number. Let's say if somebody gives you a basket, and in that basket you have, let's say, 10 balls. 10 balls are there. So you count that there are 10 balls, and then you check whether this 10 is an even or this 10 is an odd. What is this? You check this, right? So this is what the objectivity of function. So every time, rather than creating this formula of even and odd, you are dividing modulus by 2 is equal 0. Okay, this is the logic, right? So every time you write this logic, rather than you write this logic in a function and you call that function every time. So you are writing the logic once, you are not computing again and again. You are only computing it once, means you are writing that logic once. Okay, computing we are doing as many times as you are calling. Computation is based on as many calls you are making, as many times you are coming and asking the function to execute that. So you don't have to write the logic again and again. Okay, so function is being used in that way. So if you have a small objective that you want to compute, you can simply write a function, and that function becomes very universal. Function is basically universal. Like you can use one function in one particular class or one particular object. You can use the other function in another particular class and an object, based upon how you define that function, how you declare that function. So we will actually go with these things in more broader examples. We will see these concrete examples with the live code. Okay, so over that will make more sense. Clear? Now, in terms of if you compare it with any other programming language, you need to also define the variable type while you declare the variable, while you actually tell the variable that this is the value. You need to define the variable type, right? Like x is equal to, whether it is an integer or whether it is a float, what variable type you are. But in Python, it is automatically detected. Like if I do, let me erase this. If I write type x, so it is a str represent string. Okay, type of x is str. Then again you write type y, sorry, y is equal to 5. So it is an integer. So let me first explain integer. These are the data types. Integer. What is integer? All the whole numbers is represented as an integer. It can be positive, it can be negative, but whole number. Okay, like example is 0, 1, 2, -1, positive, -2, -4, like that. Float. What is float? Anything which is in decimal, 0.69 becomes float. 2.48, this is float. 6.92, these are the float. -2.7, this is a float. So these are basically known as float. Class, these are the data types. Okay. Next is string. So string is basically what? Any text. Okay, like Apple. This is referred as a string. Okay. Banana. Mango. These all are referred as a string. So this is basically a string. These are mostly used. Then you have Boolean. What is Boolean? 0, 1. True, false. These are the Boolean data types. Okay. True, false. And then finally you have the complex number. Okay. And that is something that you do for mathematical experimentation. Not much important in data engineering until you are developing any scientific formula or something like that. So you can take it as like 2 plus 1j, something like this, complex value. So these are the primary data types. Apart from that, there are different data structure that we are going to learn. Okay, I will come to the structure bit later. Just in a moment, I will come to structure. But prior to that, these are the data types. Now, one of the important aspect is also called as typecasting. Okay, but which is kind of automatic in terms of Python. So over here you can see that type of X and type of Y, these are integers. Let's say temperature is 28 degree. I'm just putting 28. Okay. Now 28.5. Sorry, 28.5. Print type temperature. You can see that it is float. The same thing that if I put it in whole number and write print of temp. Sorry. It is integer. So type automatically changes based upon the data type. So this is being done in Python by default. That is the advantage. You don't need to specify it. Automatically it will change. Similarly in string, now one thing is very important. Let's say temperature is equal to, if you put in double quotes and then if you print it, the result will be same, but the data type is different. You can see that result is same, 28 and 28, whatever is there. The type is string type. So it is not mandatory that only numbers will be integer and the decimal values will be in float. Not mandatory. It is based upon the identifiers we are using. Here we have used this double quotes. Double quotes represent string variable or string value. So that's why we have double quotes. Clear? Next, if you can also do typecasting. So this is called as typecasting. Means you have a float, you are passing the float value through an integer and resulting an integer, because you want, ultimately this is typecasting. Similarly, print, let's say str of 38. So the value is same, but you put type, things are different. See, the class is string. When I put type of string of 38.0. So this technique is called typecasting. Means you are passing a specified value to a certain data type through a certain data type and getting the data in that particular data type. You passed a float value and it got into passed a float value through a string, and that's resulting a string here. Clear? So this particular technique is known as typecasting, data type casting. When you have multiple data to get it stored, for an example, let's say you want to store a sentence. So you can go to Wikipedia. Okay. So let's say we want to get about COVID-19. And we want to store this entire thing. Come over here. Sorry. COVID is equal to, put 3 colon, okay, inverted comma, and then Control V. I'm pasting it. Okay. So these 3 inverted comma, it is basically used for, in case if there is any inverted comma within the line. Let's say if any inverted comma present within this line. If you use only one single inverted comma, then you will land into an error. In fact, you cannot use it. Okay, you will land into an error. Okay. You see, it is conflicting with this inverted comma and this. So that's why double quotes, okay, 3 times. Basically, you can store all these sentences. Or single quote 3 times. Double quote, single quote doesn't make any difference. We have to do it 3 times. Okay. You can also iterate over any given values or any given sentence. What do I mean by iteration? Means going one by one through a given sentence. So count equal to 0 for I in COVID. Count equal to count plus 1 to make it more easy. No, 281. Okay. So 281 characters are present, basically 1, 2, 3, like that. Okay. So this is called iteration. Okay. Basically, this is used as a for loop for I in COVID. So COVID is my address where all the data is stored. So for I in COVID, eventually, if you want to get the entire flavor, this is a very bad idea, but you can print I. Okay. Just as you are, for those who are starting from basics, for them, I am just printing this. So I'm printing each and every values. See, eventually it also considers space, because space is also one particular ASCII value. Space is also a ASCII value, right? So we are also taking the space. So all the values we are taking and we are counting it. Now this is called iterations. You can also, this is one mechanism. Okay, let me remove this print time. Now the same thing is being defined in this particular function of length. So length is basically a function, and what is written, this is the logic in the given function. So I can also create this as a function. So def length, take the x, okay, and everything, let me put it as an indent for I in x. So this becomes the function. So I have created a function, and in spite of print, let me put return. Return count. So this is basically acting as a function. So the logic, so every time I don't need to write this logic. I don't need to write this logic every time. I just need to pass this function like length COVID. That's it. So simple. So there are some predefined function already available to you. You don't need to write those logics. Like just now I wrote the logic for counting the string values, means length of the string. Counting the length of the string. So length of the string can already be defined by this ready-made function already present. Def of length, this is something I have created. I can also give it as length. Or any given name I can give it length. It's also doing the same thing, right? And you put as print length of x, x in the sense COVID. You pass COVID. That's it. $281. So this is something that I have created. The same logic is being written over here. There is no difference. Now these functions will be ready-made available. Some of these functions are ready-made available. Some of the functions that you need to create of your own based upon your own logic. Any mathematical equation or formulas we always create as a function, so that we don't need to write those formulas again and again from scratch. Just use that function, makes your job done. Ideally, it is also executing the same thing again and again. But in terms of interpreting the code, in terms of making the code much easy and clean, reducing the lot of memory, because every time you go and initiate a different variable for the same purpose, doesn't make any sense. So that's the reason of using functions. How do we write function? Def is what? Def is basically an identifier for Python to understand that this is the function, this is the code for creating a function. Def of length of x. X is what? X is an argument. X is known as argument. And return function can be void as well. Sometimes returns can be void as well. Void means null, nothing, blank. If I remove this return count, you will not get anything. None. So while you create a function, you have to return something. It is not again mandatory. You can say I didn't get any error, but my purpose is not solved, right? So return is not mandatory. It can be a void function as well. Okay, so it depends like in which ways you want to create your function. What is the purpose? Sometimes what happens is like you just need to calculate, or you just need to trigger as a kind of a, you want to create a trigger function where you don't need to return anything. Just count it and store it to somebody somewhere else. Okay, specifically, let's say you have done any database query and you don't need to return that query, or you just need to store it to another database. So if you return again, you need to have it to you need to take some space. You will have a memory space where you need to dump all the values. So in spite of returning, take the variable, push that variable into a different table. You don't need to return. So you are saving some memory, right? So this is how you define a given, it is based upon the respective use that you are doing, how you are using your language. Any questions? And in fact, you can pass multiple arguments as well. K, Y, X, Y, sorry, Z. Multiple arguments as well. Clear? Sometimes you can also ignore any arguments if you don't need any argument. You can make it blank as well. And if you don't know that how many arguments you needed, it could be a situation as like you don't know how many arguments your function will be getting it. At that point in time, you can use asterisk X, means as many arguments user will provide, will take those many arguments. As we are not aware how many arguments might come. 1, 2, 3, 4. For an example, name of a person. Name of a person can be of three word, can be of 2 word, can be of single word, can be of 4 word. Specifically, Indian names are very large. Right. So as per the different utility, you can means you don't know that how many arguments you are going to pass. Okay, basically you pass the name not in these not into each and every individual variable, but let's say banking forms like first name, middle name, last name, sometime only first name and middle name, sometime only first name and last name, sometime only first name. So you never know that. So this is one of the scope where when you don't know how many arguments are passing, you can use star. Okay. Any questions? Just a minute, guys. Any question, just put on chat. I'll just take some water. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, actually, suddenly my network got disconnected here. Yeah, anybody, any question or regarding? Let me share my screen.
So Rishabh, sometimes we pass the double star arguments as well, right? So what is the difference between single star arguments and double star arguments?
Yes. So when so there are two two parts to it. Okay. One part is when you are aware of double studies for those where you don't know the number of keywords. Okay. It's basically known as keyword argument. Okay. Means key over here, basically we say it as like number of values that you are deriving. Okay. Let's say you have three values. Okay. We define it as, let me open this. Yeah. We define it as k arguments. K arguments, or we write it as k args. Okay. You don't know how many keyword arguments needs to pass, then you put this double star. Okay. So for an example, in normal single star, okay, you are not aware how many arguments are in normal single star. You are not aware how many arguments needs to pass. Means directly you are saying that, for an example, let me give an example. Let's say you want to you are building a form where you have your name, you have email, you have phone number, and all of those. Single star, when you put it, when you are directly passing these values. So your function, let's say data entry is your function. So data entry, let me write it here. So data entry bracket, you are passing that my name is Rishabh, residence Bangalore, phone number is 9999, okay, blah blah blah. So these three values, okay. So this is for single star argument. For double star, you are passing the keywords as well. So what is this keyword defining? Like name is equal to Rishabh, location is equal to Bangalore, phone number so scroll up a bit. Yeah, so this is double star key args. This is single star argument. That's the only difference. But ideally, you in both these cases, you don't know how many arguments you need to pass. Generally, this becomes very this is used in objects specifically, and this is used like inside to an object. Like already you have defined features or defined values or defined variable already present, then you take this. And if you are not sure about what are the defined variables, or you're not you don't know the defined variables, then you pass this key arguments.
Thank you, Rishabh.
Yeah. And there are many things. I will come to the data structure quickly, and then again I will be back to these functions, because it is not like only you pass the values. Eventually you can also pass data structure to the function. So the different listed data structure, let me come and explain. I'm not going with operators like plus, minus, okay, those are very simple, and while we write the code, automatically we'll able to understand, like vals equal to 3, sorry, let's say x is equal to 3, y is equal to 4, okay, x plus y, z is equal to x plus y. These are very basic. I'm not going into that sense. Print x plus y, sorry, print z. So it gives us 4 plus 3, 7. This is very basic. Like in x, you have one variable. X is a variable where 3 is residing, y is a variable where 4 is residing. So when you are adding x plus y, you are getting 4 plus 3, 7. This is very simple. And you, in the same way, you do minus as well, subtraction. You do multiplication as well, and you do the division as well. You will get the respective results. Okay. Now, coming to data structure, which is very important. Rather than this, data structure is important. What are the different ways we can store the data in Python? So one of the important data structure is list. Okay, so list is used to store all the values irrespective of its data type. List can be used to store all the values irrespective of its data type. Okay, can be used to store all the values irrespective of the data type. And if you want to add any text for those who are very new to this, then if you want to add any description, you can add it in your, you can see that notebook description is added. Description is added in, this is in Collab, Google Collab. For those who are using Jupyter Notebook, for them you will get an option over there as in the notebook you will get an option as code. Okay, if you hit that drop down, you will get multiple other options. Okay, so one of the option is heading. Like if you want to add heading, okay, I'll show you later on. I will show you. It's better to show. So I'll show you once I open the Jupyter Notebook at the end. Okay. Now let me stick to this list, and let's say list is basically, let's say fruits. Fruits is equal to banana, jackfruit, grapes. Okay, so these are our fruits. Print fruits. Banana, jackfruit, grapes. Okay, so this is in form of a list. Okay, so list is one of the very important aspect, like very useful, very important. In every moment in Python, in every moment we take the primary data structure as a list. Means anything that we want to compute, or you want to store the variable in sequence, in an unordered sequence, ordered sequence, in any which way you want to store it, use this list. So this is one of the data structure that is available. Okay, the list has lot of functions. Okay, so you can basically fruits of 0. You can see banana, fruit of 0, means it has its index value as well. This is called as indexing. List indexing means I'm getting the first position, fruit of 0. Okay, I'm getting the first position of least value, fruit of 0, which is banana. Then again, fruit of 1, which is jackfruit. Indexing starts from 0. Eventually, you can also see fruits dot length. So with this, we also get the length of the list, which is 3. Means there are 3 values in a given list. The indexing starts with 0, but the length is basically starting with 1. Means 1, 2, 3, 3 values. Clear? So these are the different things, and there are 2 type of length computation. Like this is, I'm calling the direct method. The other way is length of fruits. Eventually you can call in this way. So this is calling the functions. The list can be of any given values, as I mentioned. Okay, you can create a mixed list, like let's say mixed list. You can see most all are mixed data type. We have used Boolean, we have used true false. This is Boolean, this is Boolean, this is string, this is integer, this is float. All are very mixed over here. List, now you can easily hash it. Mixed indexing, basically hashing. List of the zeroth item, mixed list of the zeroth item. Banana, comma 1, 12. And eventually you can write like this for I mixed list. You can see the data type. String, integer, string, Boolean, float. But the type mixed list. Oh, sorry. It is list. And eventually this is one of the ways. So in, like, as I mentioned, like in Python, identifiers are very important. Okay. And another important aspect in Python for those who are learning new, indentation. What is indentation? Means, let's say you are writing a logic inside a loop, then you need to provide an indentation. So indentation means one tab. Indentation means, let me write at the top. Okay. This is very, very important. And if you don't follow, you will not able to even write a single step in Python. Indentation. We also say it as an indent. Also referred as indent. So a space or for space or a tab or for space is equivalent to one indent. Okay, remember this. A tab or for space is equivalent to one indent. If you don't provide indent in functions, in class again tomorrow I will explain in our next session. Okay, it is a bit different. Before that, we need to get introduced with all the data types and structure. So these all are like over here. You can see def length. This is my first line of the function where I am defining the name of the function. This is the name of the function and how many arguments I am going to pass. So that is what we are defining here. And then I have given a for space. I have given for space. And then I have written this count equal to 0. Again, I have defined a loop. Inside the loop, again, I have given for space. Or a tab. You can use a tab as well. One tab or for space. So this indentation is super important. Without this, you will get an indent error. Let me show you as well. Let's say I am writing like this. Let me remove this. And let me execute this. And you can see indentation error. Expected an indent block. So just press a tab. That's it. coming down to list. So this is very important. Indentation is very important. It is one of the identifier. The another identifier here, I am not defining that this is list. I'm just using two brackets. This is one bracket. This is another bracket. I'm just using two brackets to define a list. If you define a list, you need to put a square bracket. Or else you can also use list constructor. So it is also same. Fruits list. Here I am defining that what is this? This is list. And inside it I need to write apple, mango, banana, grapes, like that. So this is also a way of defining. This is using constructor and this is using identifier. Okay, this block is used for identifier, identification. Clear? Any questions?
So Rishabh, what you're trying to say is like these two type of brackets are different. Is it like the square bracket? The way we define the square bracket is different from the other bracket, right?
Yeah, if you're using this round one, then you need to define this constructor. This is known as list constructor. Okay, so you need to define it, that what is this? This is a, because with round there is another data structure which is known as tuple. So Python gets confused like what you are trying to do it. If you just use only single round without even naming that this is a list, then it will take it as a different data structure. So either you can use this square bracket, that's it. Or else if you want to name, means if you want to define that what you are doing it, what you are writing as a data structure, then you can mention like list of, this is the list, apple, mango, banana, grapes.
Okay. And for loop always starts with this I, right? For I, and then we define the variable. Is it for I in mixed class?
Yeah.
What is
for
I?
I is not necessary. I is a variable. So I is basically a variable for I in mixed list. So I'm basically iterating over the list. So I'm iterating over this. So I becomes the index value of 0. 0 is banana. 1 is jackfruit. So that is what I. Okay. So for I in mixed list. So I is basically the index value.
Got it.
You can put X as well. There is no I, J, X, anything you can put it. You can put any value, but that is just a naming, that this is just an indexing, nothing else. Index value. So this is how we create. This is how we iterate. Okay, and there are many techniques to iterate. Okay, let me show you one of the technique to iterate over inside a list. So let's say fruits is equal to, for I in mixed list, I. And let's remove this name fruits, or let me give any other value. Let's say data or something like that. Data is equal to, for I in mixed list. So this is the mixed list. So for I in mixed list, data is equal to inside this list. So this is like I'm iterating a mixed list, which is a different list, and I'm storing all the values in this data list. Okay, list inside list. Okay, I'm iterating. Actually, I'm creating a new list. It is not list inside list. It is creating a new list. So mixed list is basically a list where we have all the values. So for I in mixed list, and then I. Okay, so I for I in mixed list. So I am carrying all the values from mixed list and storing in this new list, which is named as data. So if I just execute it, so data. So you can see that it is exactly the same as your mixed list. If I just print mixed list, it's exactly the same. There is no difference. So this is how you create means you can do many things with list. You can also write a condition over here. Let me show you. So I want to store only those values which are string. So if type of I is equal str, then only store the I. Mixed list of, let's say, this is 0. Okay, got it. Data. You see banana and apple at the list, because basically str is a reserved word, so Python automatically gets it. No need of putting into a string form. So that was the error I was getting. Not error, basically it was not giving a match and it was giving me a null value. So here what we can see that for I in mixed list, if type of I is equal str is a data type, then store that I. So this is data. So banana and apple. Okay. So in mixed list is this one. Apple means there are only two string and one integer, one boolean and one float. Clear. So you can apply the logic. So I'm doing, so this is kind of optimizing my entire code. So I have optimized the entire code into a single line. Now this, if you want to write it from a scratch, it will be like, you have to first write a for loop, then inside the loop you need to write a if else program, and then storing everything in a list. So a lot of things are there. So here I'm just doing in a very optimized way, putting everything in a single line. And the amount of memory usage is quite less, because these things are very much important in terms of very large amount of data, specifically in data engineering. You are dealing with a very high volume of data and you need to write the logics which are very optimized, highly optimized. Okay. So that's why you can, and eventually there is no limit, like you can keep on adding as many as logic into the same line. So this is all about list. And there are some other functions like list, concatenation, list, appending. Okay. So those things I will also show you. Before that, any doubts, anybody? Any questions? There are few more things to show in list, as it is one of the important, so I'm a bit stressing on this. Most of the time we need it. So let's say if I want to access the last value and I don't know what is my length. Okay, so let's say -1. Okay. So this is by the last value. -1 represents the last value. Now, if you want to know, if you want to pull out the last two values, if I want to pull out the last two values, then what we will do? -2 colon, means colon represent range, last two values. You can see colon is basically a range, and in fact this range varies. Like it is not only last two, means if you remove this, you can also make it like top two, mixed underscore list. Let's say I want only the data between 1 to 3. Eventually I can do that as well. So range is something that helps you with all the values 1 to 3. You give negative value, you are actually doing it in a recursive manner.
So Rishabh, true didn't come, right? The range 1 to 3. 12.
Yeah.
Apple.
So
and what about true?
Yeah. No, 3 basically, yes. So one important thing is it only takes to the last value, means when you give 3 means it will only stop at 2. If you give 4, then it will come and stop at true. if I give 4, so last value it doesn't take it up. Then it gives me 12 apple and true. So it starts with the value that I specify and ends with the value which is kind of just one step ahead.
So it's n minus 1.
Yeah, n minus 1, correct. So this is called as range. Yeah. Yeah. Any question?
So Rishabh, on this cell 58, so you are not giving the end value here, right? So like, will it
Yes.
assume like it is 0 there?
No, it is assuming that from the end, because as I don't know, let's say I have a 10,000 values, or let's say I have some abstract length of list somewhere, let's say 787. So I'm not sure, right, what is my end value. Every time this end value is changing. So what I can do is I can do -2 colon, means it is from the end, it will start from 787 minus 2. The last two values means 786 and 787.
Okay. Okay. So here, when we give -2, we need not to mention any value after that colon, right?
No, basically you are defining that from the last value.
From the last
Similarly,
value.
yeah. Similarly, from the front top value also you can do the same thing. Like you can skip the colon and you can just do colon. Means you can just skip the top value, means 0. I am not mentioning 0. Colon 2 means I'm from the first value I am just navigating.
Okay.
So 0 and 1 is kind of projected here.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Rishabh.
Yeah. And eventually, you can also give the range in negative as well. So let's say -2 minus -1, something like that. You can give the range. It is only true.
Okay.
You can also check whether an item is present in a given list or not. So how do we check that? Banana. In mixed list. It will return always Boolean, okay? Result will be every time Boolean, yes or no. So banana in mixed list. Result is true. Okay, and with this you can actually do the checks, like if these values are present or not, if the list of value is present or not. Eventually you can check that as well. So this is used for checking whether the values are present or not in a given list. You can eventually change the value of the list as well. For an example, mixed list 0, I want to change into jackfruit. So I'm accessing the first value of the list, okay, and I'm changing the value of the list, which is jackfruit, and then mixed list. Okay, I just do this. Then you can see that banana got overwritten, and now we have a jackfruit. And it is not only like I can do with its own data type. I can use anything else. I can, like jackfruit was in string, right? I can use integer. It is not mandatory in that sense. So I'm using integer. You can also, sorry, you can also change the range of values as well. For an example, it's mixed underscore list 12 comma 0 is to 1. Is equal to in a list you need to mention is equal to, let's say, dragon fruit you can see dragon fruit banana. Now one important aspect, if you have already noticed it, that I have used 0 is to 1, dragon fruit and banana. So there are two 12s. It should be ideally 0, 2, but I have used purposely 0, 1 to make sure that even in indexing, this is the only rule, that first it starts with 0 and n minus 1. So you see one extra value got added, which is banana. In our entire list, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 is my length of the list. But it doesn't mean that the index is only 0 for this, okay? Because the length has changed. Now length is equivalent to the index. Mixed fruit dot length. Sorry, mixed list. Mixed fruit, I don't. Cool. You see that this is 6, and if I access the value, 0 is dragon fruit, 1 is banana. So you can change the overall range of values together as well. Eventually, you can also, now you can ask me a question that what if I have to change one single value, then that is already known, right? Mixed insert to 0 and you can change the value directly there. Now, if you want to insert, there is another concept called insert. So mixed list dot insert. Let's say in the position 2, I want to, position 2 means third, 0, 1, 2, third. I want to insert, let's say I want to insert something else. Let's say grapes. So you can see grapes got inserted at the position 2, 0, 1, 2. Okay. So these are the, I will just name this Python day 1. And I will be sharing the notebook, don't worry. And so this is all about list. So what we learned today, just to summarize, understanding the different aspects like ID and all of those, okay, environments, the structure of Python. And then we understood the different data types. Then we understood the data structure, okay. And in between we learned function, which is again, which is one of the attribute, okay, is one of the important aspect. So in our next session, we will talk about more about data structure, because that is what is very important in Python. And without data structure, we cannot basically execute anything. So data structure, and then we will go with the data engineering packages and libraries. Okay. Clear? Any questions, any doubts?
Rishabh, this all is a very small data set, right? When we are working with a very large data set, and how do we work on the data basically? So, for
I will
example,
show you.
we're working.
Basically, these are the primary basic data structure. Okay. So we have different libraries to deal with large data. External libraries are there. Okay.
No, I know. Like what I'm saying is, for example, you are inserting the data, this -2, and bringing from the range and all that, right? Since it is a very small data, we are bringing and inserting all the data like that. So we are using this code in order to insert. But in case of larger data set, like million records and all that, so in that case, the insertion is going to be different, right? Not a simple logic like this.
Yeah. So over there, we then will check that what is the length. Okay. What is the length of this list? For an example, let's say we have a list with some million records. Okay. Now over there, the first thing is we don't know that at which point or where we need to insert this data, right? So primarily we'll check the length. We'll check the identified data. Like for an example, here we want to put this grapes. There will be certain logic that will actually help us to understand first that where to put that data. So that we will be doing with the help of some external data set. Okay. So those things that will automatically scale. Okay. First is like calculating the length of the list. Length is million. Now out of that million, let's say where is dragon fruit and where is grapes, or where is banana and where is respective identifiers, we can also take it as. And then you insert that, and what is that index? What is the index of banana? What is the index of 12? Okay, and then you automatically get, right, index of banana and index of 12, you get the index of grapes, and you insert over there grapes.
And your target insertion again is going to be million records, right? So again, we cannot write all those million values inside the code. So we have to call it from the external data file or anything.
So basically, there are external packages and libraries which actually run in a parallel mode. Like these cannot be done in million times. Then it will take entire day, and it is one of the bad ideas, in fact. So for that, we have different libraries to handle it in a very different way. Specifically, when it comes in if it is a structured, then we basically use SQL queries to do it, because otherwise your kernel, because everything is in your memory. If your system doesn't support it, most of the time the kernel will wipe off. So to make the kernel more stable, we take the advantage of these SQL or NoSQL. Maybe it is a structured or unstructured, doesn't matter. We have the tools for that. So when the data scales, we actually move over there, do all the mining there, and then come back over here with operations. With the logical part, we come with Python. Basically, these insertion and all in real-time production, we never do with Python. We always do with query, database query.
And final question, for example, I use Anaconda for declaring all this variable. The storage it consumes, is it on the RAM space, or like how does it when it is Anaconda?
No, Anaconda is just a platform, but ideally it is using Anaconda is just a platform. Okay. Ideally, it is
Mhm.
using your computer memory, okay, your RAM space to store all the data.
Okay. So now coming to this Google thing, right? So where does this consume?
Mhm.
Is it in the cloud?
It is
or
using
RAM?
my drive, not my RAM. You can see that RAM and disk. This is using the GCP has assigned one storage to me, right? Which is 15 GB storage. So this Collab is basically running in this 15 GB storage.
Okay. So then it stores in the cloud, not in my RAM now.
Yes, not in my RAM.
Got it. Thank you.
Hi, this was on the
Yeah, hi. Sure.
actually,
Go ahead.
you said that query, like it is a SQL, it is related to query or it is different?
Sorry, can you repeat? Your voice is a bit cracking.
No, you said some query you have to insert for the inserting the value.
Okay, so I mean database queries. Okay, yes.
Okay, fine. Okay. And you said this memory about this Anaconda and this one. So which one is the best for
I would
the?
suggest Anaconda as we all are in learning phase. Google Collab
Okay.
is used by those who are already expert and kind of quickly want to wipe their hand in particular data set, or just temporarily checking or something like that. Or somebody who is not having a computer
Okay.
can actually use Collab from their mobile phone and do it. But these are not recommended, okay, because you will not able to see the error, environment related error, installation error. There are so many things to learn in terms of error. So as many errors as you get it, as much well learning you will get it. So it is recommended to use Anaconda.
Okay, and basically how much memory requirement for the PC, like a minimum requirement
To
anything?
8 GB is fine. 4 GB nowadays nobody uses, but 8 GB is very good enough. In fact, the system which I'm using is 8 GB.
Okay.
And in basically in real-time production, like 16 GB is all good. It's very good, in fact.
Okay,
8 GB
thank
is fine, but for practice and all, 8 GB is fine.
you. Okay, thank you.
Cool, then I will be sharing this notebook over the Slack, and thanks to everyone for joining. See you in the next week.
Thank you, Rishabh. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Yep.
Thank you, Rishabh.
Thank you, Rishabh.